Sue Thomas, President of City Club, and I welcome you all. Those of you here at the Governor Hotel, and those of you listening on OPB or KBPS radio or watching on Portland Community Media's CityNet 30. Thank you for joining City Club this week for the Republican Gubernatorial Primary Forum. As we begin, we would like to offer our appreciation to our Friday Forum corporate sponsors, whose generous financial support make these time-honored City Club luncheons possible. We are exceedingly pleased today to have some of our sponsors right here in the audience, and so I'd ask Catherine Coakley and her group from Key Private Bank to stand up, as well as Don Williams, Chief Operating Officer at Schwabe Williamson Wyatt and the Schwabe team. If you could all stand up and give these folks a hand, we appreciate it. And I'd also like to make sure that we thank all of our sponsors, Northwest Natural as well. In a moment, I will introduce our moderator, who will explain the rules of procedure for the debate and introduce the debaters. But first, I want to remind us all that City Club's mission is to inform our members and the community on public issues. I mention this now because we cannot achieve City Club's mission if we're not open to information and views that may be different from our own personal opinions. So such, I ask that everyone in the room remain courteous, respectful, and open to the information conveyed, even when you disagree with what you hear. By doing so, you will help City Club further our mission of civil and civic discourse, and you will honor our guest speakers, our process, and the interests of our community. So now to introduce our moderator. Sharon Van Sickle Robbins co-founded KVO Advertising and Public Relations in 1983, and now operates a cut flower business on Sauvie Island. Sharon has been a City Club member since 1996. In 2008, she chaired the City Club's study on enhancing Portland's business environment. She is currently City Club's president-elect. Sharon?
Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. It's my privilege to moderate this forum between the Republican gubernatorial primary contenders, Alan Alley, Chris Dudley, John Lim, and Bill Sizemore. This forum will have several sections. First, each candidate will give a 2-minute opening statement in a randomly determined order. Following the opening statements, candidates will respond to questions prepared in advance of this meeting by City Club's Friday Forum Committee and City Club staff. These questions have not been shared with the candidates. These are the only questions that will be asked today. There will be no questions from the floor. We will rely on the judgment of our distinguished panel of City Club members seated at the table in front of me to decide whether or not the questions have indeed been answered by the candidates. If 2 or more of these members raise their cards, I will restate the question and give the candidate 45 seconds to try again. On our panel, we have Brianne Arnold, Patty Tillett, and Ted Kay. Keeping time at our debate today is Joe Sixta. Following City Club's questions, each candidate will have the opportunity to ask one question of one other candidate. After this rotation of questions, each candidate will make a 2-minute closing statement. As Sue said, please be respectful of the candidates, and please hold all your applause until the end of the program. And now the candidates. Our first debater today will be Alan Alley. In January 1997, Mr. Alley co-founded the semiconductor company Pixelworks, where he still serves as chairman of the board. Prior to founding Pixelworks, he was the vice president of corporate development, product marketing, and engineering at Infocus Systems. In 2007, Mr. Alley became the deputy chief of staff for Governor Ted Kulongoski, where he was responsible for overseeing economic development, technology, transportation, workforce training, and energy policy. In 2008, he ran as the Republican candidate for state treasurer. Our second debater will be Chris Dudley, who is best known for his 16 seasons in the NBA, including 6 with the Portland Trailblazers. While in the NBA, he represented the Players Association as the executive treasurer and participated on the negotiating committee. In 1994, Mr. Dudley founded the Dudley Foundation, which is dedicated to helping kids with diabetes by providing educational programs and advocacy and supporting diabetes research. He is now a partner at Filigree Advisors, a small financial company based here in Oregon. John Lim, our third debater today, began his political career in 1990 when he ran in the Republican gubernatorial race. He followed this run with a successful bid for state senator for the I-5 Corridor District 11, where he was the first-generation Korean American to serve in any state senate in the United States. Mr. Lim served as state senator from 1993 to 2000. He then served as state representative for House District 50, representing outer southeast Portland, from 2004 to 2008, before running once again for governor this year. Today's final debater is Bill Sizemore. Mr. Sizemore has been working in Oregon politics full-time since 1993, running a statewide taxpayer organization and placing more than 20 measures on the Oregon ballot. Currently, Mr. Sizemore is the executive director of the Oregon Taxpayers Union. In 1980, he ran for the Oregon State Senate as a Republican in Multnomah County, and he was the Republican candidate for governor in Oregon in 1998. And if you'll give everybody a hand, we'll get started. We will begin the forum with the opening statements. Mr. Alley, please begin with your opening statement of 2 minutes.
Thank you, Sharon, and it's my pleasure and honor to be here. I want to talk a little bit about my background. I think it's the most important thing that I bring to the table here. For 25 years, I've been growing companies all over the United States. I've identified markets, invested in those companies, brought management together, and done it successfully. I've had 3 public offerings, 2 as an investor, and 1 as a CEO entrepreneur. And when I think about the governor's office, I can't think of anything more important right now. I can't think of anything more important than our economy, businesses, new technologies, and understanding how to bring those together here in our state. The last company I started, Pixelworks, it was 4 friends plus myself, $10,000 and an idea. And 10 years later, we had sold $1 billion worth of semiconductor products. And I tell that story not because we're special, because that's what America's all about. That's what General Motors was before it was government motors. That's what Ford was, Chrysler was. That's what every major company in this state was, founded on those principles. Now, we get to meet a lot of people when we run for governor. And I met another governor, and he said, Alan, what could possibly be an issue that you'd run on for governor of Oregon? I say, well, we have the highest unemployment rate, hunger rate, homeless rates. Our schools are rated D and F, and Portland was recently rated the most depressed city in the United States. And he said, how can that be with all of those assets, your deep water ports, your access to Asian markets, your timber, your ranch land, your farmland, the Columbia River for irrigating? How could you possibly be in that position? How could you screw it up? And I think it's not about screwing up those resources. It's about our vision as we go forward, the Oregon that we're proud of, the Oregon that brought us all here. Thank you.
Mr. Dudley, your opening statement.
Thank you, and thank you for hosting this debate. Well, Oregon's problems and challenges are well documented, and unfortunately, felt all too real by our workers, our businesses, and our families. And they're especially felt by people who are out of work and looking for work. Our problems come down to a few basic facts. 1, we have too few jobs, and even worse, too few job creators. Our government is growing faster than what we can afford. And for too long, our politicians have made more taxes rather than more jobs the answers to our problems. But I'm not running for governor to dwell on the problems. I'm running for governor to provide the ideas and the leadership to fix them. I'm running to help lead Oregon's comeback. My plan is called Jobs First, and it's built on the premise that until we start, and until we get to the point where Oregon is creating more private sector jobs, little else matters. Jobs allow individuals to take care of themselves and their families. They also provide the needed revenue that we need for essential services like schools. Simply put, jobs equal quality of life. Now, as governor, I will focus on 3 things to help improve the environment to increase job creation in Oregon. First, reform the way that we spend. Second, reform the way that we tax. And third, reform the way that we educate. As governor, I will control the rate of government spending. I will lower taxes so that it is more attractive to invest in the businesses and ideas in Oregon. And third, I will help lead the transformation of our higher education system so that it can be the jobs and ideas factories of tomorrow. Now, I look forward to discussing the details of my plan as we go further. But I want to end up on this note, that I believe that if we do those three things, that in 4 years we'll look back at an Oregon that is better off than we are today. Thank you.
Mr. Lim, your opening statement.
Thank you for having me today. It is my great honor to be here to discuss the future of our state. If you want to elect the governor by the height of the person, you should elect him. But if you want to elect someone who has experience, I'm talking about the real life experience. I have more than 35 years of business background. And when I came here, I came without a penny in my pocket. I started out as a janitor and a student of the Western Evangelical Seminary, and then a mom and pop grocery store. And I have a humble beginning. I served in the Senate and House proudly. It has been my great honor to serve you as U.S. State Senator and a public servant. And also, I have more life experience than anyone else. As a matter of fact, my friend, he is my son's age, you know. But I am the oldest among all candidates, which means I have more wisdom and the life experience. At this time of difficult economic time, you need someone who has life experience, legislative experience, life experience. And I have all those. And I have a passion and compassion for you to serve you. So what you are looking at, not one of the candidates. I am the candidate. I was elected from the Multnomah County 4 times among the strong Democratic district, but as a Republican, I was able to win 4 times. So with your support in this coming time, and I like to weather out these difficult economic times, and we will bring more jobs. When elected, I will be the only Asian governor in the nation, and I will attract a lot of dollars from Asia and capital investment and tourism. God bless you, and thank you.
Mr. Sizemore, your opening statement.
I think everyone in the room is aware that something is going on in our country, that we're actually engaged in somewhat of a civil war with the very aggressive socialist left, if you will. We just went through the health care debate. I think we'll continue that for some time. And on the other side, there is the more free enterprise capitalist market-based approach to dealing with fiscal problems. And I've been asked by many people, where's the middle ground in this war? How do we all come together and get along? Well, I have concluded that there's not much middle ground out there like there was 20, 30 years ago where we could actually get together. But I think one side's going to win this war and one side's going to lose it. And what you saw with Measure 66 and 67 was just a snapshot of the divisiveness that war has led us to. That one side that is apparently just anti-business and wants to put up a sign over Oregon. If you're productive, if you want to invest and succeed or create jobs, make money, you're not welcome here. We will punish you if you come here. And as governor, I would take our state in the opposite direction. And the one thing that I would do, I think, more aggressively and assertively than my opponents, is I believe the public employee unions have taken over this state from top to bottom, and they must be stopped. And the stranglehold they have on this state must be broken. The PERS debacle is we're $13 billion in the hole, and we can't afford it. And even liberals, which I know many of the people in this audience are that, you ought to be concerned about the reality that money that you want to go to educate kids and go to social programs is being siphoned off by hundreds of millions of dollars at a time into a PERS fund that is too lavish, and we can't afford it. I am the one person who has a plan to fix the problem. Thank you.
We will now move to the portion of the program where I will ask the questions prepared by the Friday Forum Committee and by City Club staff. Again, the candidates have not seen these questions in advance. I'm going to open by asking each candidate a question which he alone will have 60 seconds to answer. There will be no rebuttals. I will begin with John Lim. A national Washington Post poll revealed that nearly a quarter of Republicans under the age of 35 say that they are liberal or moderate on social issues, including abortion rights and same-sex marriage, while only 13% of Republicans over 65 felt the same way. Mr. Lim, as Oregon's chief executive, how would you represent the interests of the younger, more socially liberal members of your party and among the electorate at large while governing?
Thank you very much. I love them all, either conservative, that the moderate, and the liberal. They are all Oregonian, and I'm willing to work with them, especially young people. I don't mind them to be a liberal when they're young, but when they have a family and grow up paying taxes, and they will become the Republican Party. And in my life experience, I passed all of those ages, and I have experience, legislative experience, life experience, especially because I'm deeply concerned the young people that I established the John Lim Scholarship Foundation. I always given the funds to the student at the Mount Hood Community College or nationally. So I'm committed working with the young people. I'm oldest in my heart, I'm the youngest.
The second question will go to, okay, you have 45 seconds to try again. I will repeat the question.
Okay.
A national Washington Post poll revealed that nearly a quarter of Republicans under the age of 35 say that they are liberal or moderate on social issues, while only 13% of Republicans over 65 felt the same way.
Okay.
As Oregon's chief executive, how would you represent the interests of the younger, more socially liberal members of your party and among the electorate at large while governing?
Okay, when I become the governor, I have a special plan that in my governor's office, I'm going to have a special intern program for the young people. And then I will take anyone, as many they can come, 1 day, 1 week, or 1 month. We are going to train them to be the next leader. And then the two young people, just a matter of communication. When I met the young people, they felt good. They think that I'm one of them. I communicate with them. Sometimes you think old and young have a difficulty communicating. I'm not. I communicate with them, I talk with them, and then there's a matter of how to communicate. And I feel I'm young, I will continue to work with them.
Okay, the next question is for Mr. Alley. In announcing your run for governor, the Oregonian quoted you as saying that your experience in business gives you a good perspective on how to boost the state's economy. But the company that you founded, Pixelworks, has lost much of its market value since 2000, and many of its Oregon jobs are now in California or overseas. How does this support your claim that you are the best person to turn around Oregon's economy?
Well, I think we started Pixelworks with $10,000 and 5 friends, and that was it, and an idea. The first stock price, I think, was a tenth of a penny a share. We grew that company over the next 10 years to sell $1 billion worth of products all over the world and do it very successfully. The stock price has gone from a tenth of a penny to $50 to 30 cents to $5.30. But through that process, we built a global company and we built jobs for people all over the world. We responded to global markets and global market demands and shifts. I think that's what you need in a chief executive. It's easy to grow these companies on the upside. In fact, I used to tell the team that you don't need management on the upside. We've restructured that company. It's profitable now, and it's come back from its lows, and I'm very, very proud of it. I only wish we had 10 or 15 more Pixelworkses in the state. It's too bad we have just a couple.
The next question is for Mr. Sizemore. In 2008, you admitted in court that you used hundreds of thousands of dollars from a tax-exempt Nevada foundation for personal expenses. 2 years later, you have been charged again, this time with criminal tax evasion. Each of the 3 counts in your current indictment could lead to a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison. Given these allegations and their potential consequence, why do you think that you would be a better leader for Oregon than the other candidates sharing the stage today?
It's been about a decade now that the public employee unions, specifically the OEA and the American Federation of Teachers, have been suing me nonstop, and they have admitted that they do that because they want to get me out of politics. In fact, at one point, they even offered me that I owed them $4 million in a judgment, which was later overturned by the Supreme Court, the Oregon Supreme Court. And they offered me, so look, Bill, we just want you gone. How about we forget the $4 million and you sign an agreement to stop putting measures on the ballot? This has always been about politics. And John Kroger, the Attorney General of the state of Oregon, was elected with almost 100% SEIU, Public Employee Union money. And he turned around afterwards and indicted their number one opponent, our arch enemy, for criminal tax evasion. The case is frivolous, and when it's over with, I will not only be found not guilty, but John Kroger will be the one with egg on his face.
It's unanimous.
Three out of three.
It's unanimous. You have 45 seconds to try again.
You want to repeat the question? Oh, no, wait. I withdraw that request. You've said it enough. I'm not sure what part of the question I didn't answer, to be honest with you. I think I addressed it. Could you be specific?
I think the question is, why do you think, given all of the allegations that I won't repeat, that you would be a better leader for Oregon than the other candidates sharing the stage today?
Well, part of what has happened is that the battle lines have become clear between my enemies and myself. And I know there's some temptation to find the middle ground and try to all get along. I think we're past that in dealing with the public employee unions. I think they own the state from the top to the bottom, literally. And what I will do that I don't think my opponents would do is I will stand toe-to-toe with them and I say, we're drawing a line in the sand and you're going no further. This PERS debacle is over. I've actually devised, and you can find it on the sizemoreforgovernor.com website, a complete overhaul of the public employee compensation and collective bargaining process that benefits the taxpayers and is fair to public employees. And I will do that where others would not.
Thank you. Question to Mr. Dudley. As Secretary-Treasurer of the NBA Players Association, you successfully challenged salary cap rules not once but twice. Yet you have said that as governor, you plan to crack down on public employee salaries and benefits. You have called these two stances consistent, even though teachers and police officers make about $50,000 each year, and NBA players make an average of $5.3 million each year. Do you believe that teachers, police officers, and firefighters in Oregon are being paid more than they deserve? And if so, how much should their compensation be reduced?
Well, I think you start off with the question, and I've come from a family of educators. My mom's a teacher, my sister's a teacher, and I start off by saying that teachers, police officers, firefighters are good people, great people who serve our state well. But we have to look at our state as where we're going, and we have to have a path that is sustainable. And as governor, I will do what is best for this state. I will not be beholden to any special interest groups, and do what is sustainable for our state so that we can educate our children and hire more teachers when that time comes. So I think the answer there is that we have to get ahead of the curve before we end up like Los Angeles, which is on the brink of bankruptcy, what we've seen happen in Greece, Michigan, California, and look at the compensation and have a level that is fair, comparable to other states, comparable to what is relevant for that we can afford for our future. And I think that's the bottom line, is we have to come to a place that's a win-win for our state.
It's unanimous. Again, you have 45 seconds to try again. Do you need me to repeat the question?
Which part do you not?
Do you believe that teachers, police officers, and firefighters in Oregon are being paid more than they deserve? And if so, how much should their compensation be reduced?
Well, I think deserve is a relative term. I mean, I think the world of teachers, and I think it should be an unlimited amount in that regard. But what is realistic for our state is a different question, and I think that's how it has to be framed. And so I do think that we're going to have to address it and bring in costs where applicable. And I have outlined in my plan, I've talked about having state workers contribute to their state health care plans. That's something I've come out for. And we have to have a measure of compensation that our state frankly can afford, and that is equivalent to what the market bears.
I will now direct questions at a single candidate who will have 60 seconds to respond, and then opposing candidates will have the option of a 45-second rebuttal. We encourage candidates to respond to both the question as well as the other responses. The first question will go to Mr. Lim. In February, the Oregon Senate passed a goal of reducing carbon emissions by 75% by 2050 in order to help curb the effects of global warming. Do you believe that global warming is occurring, and would you support the Oregon Senate's efforts to reduce greenhouse gases?
I'm proud to say that when I was in the House, we passed the legislation by the 2025 reduce the carbon monoxide, and also the 25% of the energy has to come from the natural resources. So it is maybe that the task sometimes might not able to accomplish. That is the goal. Yes, global warming is happening, but we need to decide on science, whether it's coming from humans or natural causes. No one can say for sure. Of course, human causes might be happen. I'm not denying it. But it's coming from the humans and the cars, I think is wrong. It is more on natural that the phenomena happening in our ages.
Mr. Sizemore, you have the option of a 45-second rebuttal.
I think global warming is a hoax. I believe the planet is in a cooling trend, not a warming trend. I believe that the entire scheme and design is an anti-technology, anti-Western philosophy that's designed to shut down economies, and I have opposed it from the beginning, and I'm surprised, frankly, that Mr. Lim believes it exists. Because if you can't tell and are not willing to call nonsense, then you are going to buy into the things that the legislature will try to do if Democrats control it to address global warming, which are I think, economically foolish and ill-advised. And I think we're better off to just recognize that global warming isn't a reality and not have policies that go the other direction.
Mr. Dudley, you have the option of a 45-second rebuttal.
Sure. Well, when it comes to global warming, I'm not a scientist. I know we have global warming. How much of it is human caused, I have no idea. But I think what we can all agree and find common ground is that it makes sense for our country to seek out alternative energies. It does not make sense for our country to continue to send hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars over to other countries overseas, sometimes to countries that frankly don't care for us. I think it's in our future best interest to seek out alternative energies, and I think that's something we should support.
Mr. Alley, you also have the option of 45 seconds.
Yes, I believe that there is climate change, warming or cooling, whichever you want to pick. It's been going on for a long time. I do not believe that CO2 emissions from humans are the sole cause of whatever that climate variation happens to be. And I talked to the League of Conservation Voters about this, and they were aghast. It's like, how can you say that? I said, well, I have millions and millions of dollars that I've invested in technologies where my engineers told me that one little thing that they'd fix would fix the technology. Most of the time, they weren't right. I do believe that we need a policy around fossil fuels to get our economy out from the wedge between China and India's consumption and the Middle East production. And that way, we do sync up.
The next question will go to Mr. Alley first. According to the Oregonian, the Oregon University System Chancellor believes that next year's projected Oregon budget gap of $2.5 billion is likely to land hard on higher education. But higher education drives a competitive workforce, innovative entrepreneurship, and economic growth. What specific laws, policies, or funding mechanisms would you change to better support higher education?
Well, I think it's a false premise that we have a $2.5 billion gap. I think that's the bottom line. We've increased the all-funds budget by 49% in the last 4 years alone, from $40 billion to $60 billion. Nobody wants to talk about it. That's what we've done. And then when we talk about a $2.5 billion gap, that's after you've increased the current level of spending by about $2 billion. This is ridiculous. I mean, the basic fundamental premise that we're dealing off of and that we accept it, and everybody just kind of sits there and accepts it, is ridiculous. We have to go in and bottoms-up budget all of those agencies. We have to get line item budgets for all of the agencies. We have to have income statements, balance sheets, and priorities set for all of those agencies. We have to rack and stack them and vet them. Then we put our priorities in place, and I'm telling you, we do not have a $2.5 billion budget. We have enough money to fund the priorities. We have enough money to fund higher education.
Mr. Lim, you have the option of 45-second rebuttal.
Yes, I believe our current education system is not the best in our state, in the nation, and we are graduating the lots of high schoolers, but we don't have a good education system. That is the problem. I understand that. At the same time, we need to be more inventive. I'm willing to support the public, the higher ed, some of them into the public corporation. So let them take some money from the private sources, and then each individual businessman, we should be mindful that helping the higher education, especially is establishing some scholarships.
Mr. Sizemore?
First, I agree with Alan Alley about the approach to, and I support zero-based budgeting. Everybody starts from zero every budget cycle, and you have to justify not only your budget, but your very existence. When I ran for governor in '98, there were a lot of eyebrows raised when they looked at my proposed budget because I increased higher ed higher than John Kitzhaber did. Higher ed and state police have tended over the years to be kicked around a lot and whipping boys, and they don't get often their share of the budget. And maybe they don't hire the best lobbyists or what have you, but I think if we address the PERS issue, we reduce the cost of higher ed. If we address the PERS issue, we make more money available in the general fund for higher ed, but that is not a place where I would target cuts.
Mr. Dudley, 45 seconds.
Well, I'm a believer that you educate today for your economy of the future, and I think higher education has to be a priority for our state. And I've supported the initiatives put forward by John Von Schlegel and Fromeyer to unshackle our higher ed from the 6,300 line items that they're under right now and allow them some freedom there. I think it's an area that we have to prioritize as far as spending, and that we need to turn around the 25-year decline in higher ed that our state has been ongoing. We need to reverse that, and as governor, that is something that would be our priority, to reverse that trend for higher education. Thank you.
The next question will go first to Mr. Sizemore. Oregonians consistently rank the quality of public education as one of their top concerns and priorities. What do you believe are the 3 most important steps that must be taken to strengthen the state's K-12 public schools?
I have a little motto that I sound like a broken bell here or a broken record, but I say no to the teachers' unions and yes to kids and education. Reining in the teachers' union is important to that. They stand in the way of every major reform that would bring accountability to our schools. Things like merit pay, performance-based pay that even Barack Obama agreed. It's time. We have to start paying teachers for their job performance. One of the things I would like to do, and I proposed it with a ballot measure, probably would have passed if it would have been a standalone proposal, and that is that when there are layoffs at school, how about this? How about we keep the best teachers, not necessarily those who have been there the longest? And our policy is that, well, we let the unions dictate the policy, and it's strictly seniority-based. And a seniority-based system does not benefit kids or education, and that's one of the things I would work to repeal.
Mr. Dudley, you have the option of 45 seconds.
Yeah, education, this is something, we spend approximately $10,000 per student right now, which is somewhere in the median. And our return is our schools just got ranked 43rd a couple weeks ago in the country. To me as a parent, this is unacceptable. And you further that, and this is a case where we need leadership, you further that by the race to the top, where our state was graded an F, given an F. And to me, having 3 children in public schools, that's outrageous. And in fact, that now that we were graded an F, and now we're putting together committees to look at whether we should reapply or not. At some point, someone's got to step up and say, yes, we should reapply. We should get people together, and we can do this. and we need to do it for our children. If Delaware and Tennessee can do it, we can do it as well.
Mr. Alley?
Now, we have a funding problem here where we pour more money in the top and it's not getting through to the classrooms. I've visited 31 schools across the state. There's innovation going on in those schools. But none of the money is getting to the classroom, yet we spend $10,000 per student, 30 students per classroom. That's $300,000 per classroom. A teacher's about 70 grand. There's $230,000. I can't find it. And I tried to, and I can't find it. I think what we need to do is reverse the whole thing, put $300,000 in every classroom, let the teacher, the principals, and the parents decide how much overhead do you want to buy from your school district, your education service district, and the state. We've got to turn the whole funding thing upside down, and that's what I would do.
Mr. Lim?
Thank you very much. According to the Department of Education, in our state high schoolers, about 68% graduating, which means 1/3 of the students are failing. This is the biggest problem we are facing, especially when I become the governor. My plan is we need to customize our education system. Each individual talented, we need to teach according to their talent, not the one size fits all that is not going to work. And I like to see more competition in education. Just the public education is public, and we need to put some kind of an incentive system, make sure that the teachers teach our children better. So.
The next question will go first to Mr. Dudley. Oregon's kicker law refunds money to taxpayers when state revenue exceeds projections by 2% or more. In 2009, a bipartisan task force led by a Republican spent a year studying revenue restructuring and concluded that Oregon needs kicker reform. Do you support kicker reform, and why or why not?
Well, I think we can all agree that the kicker is inherently flawed in the way that it was designed. But what it represents, and this is important because right now trust in government is at an all-time low. What it represents is the last restraint on government spending. And until we restore some of that trust in the government, I don't think we can address the kicker. So no. I believe that we have to address the spending side first. That we have to show that the government can restrain from spending every dime in the building and can actually budget, just the way we do at homes or in our business. And I've talked about in my plan and putting money aside for a real reserve fund, but do that without touching the kicker. And we need to restore that trust because that trust is not there at this time. So at this point, I would say no.
Mr. Alley?
Well, if we didn't have the kicker, we'd be about $1.2 billion further in the hole right now because we would have spent the money, locked it in, those people would be here, we'd be paying their salaries, and ultimately their retirements. So I actually think there's a benefit. What I would change is the 0 to 2% above the budget today that we currently spend, I would put that in a reserve fund. I would put that in a rainy day fund. I would also establish a line item rainy day fund of about 0.5% of the all funds budget, not the general fund, the all funds budget. I would accrue that money in the rainy day fund till we reached about $2.5 billion in reserve, and then any of those funds would go to pay down debt. We are now one of the highest debt per capita states in the United States.
Mr. Lim?
Thank you. Especially since 66 and 67 passed, even current Governor Kulongoski even energized, yeah, we need to take the kicker. And the kicker money belongs to the people. If legislators and the current governor wants to take the kicker, I think we people should kick them out. And then, state government, we need reserve funds. If we save 2% out of $15 billion, it is $3 billion. In 10 years, we can have $1.5 billion in reserve.
Mr. Sizemore?
There are people in the legislature who are literally pained, physically pained, by the thought of giving taxpayers back some money that we've got. It's in our hands now. It is not theirs, it's ours. And even though the law says it's theirs and we have to give it back, it's a one-way street for them. And no matter how much state government grows in a particular biennium, they spend it. Inflation maybe is 2 or 3% per year, so maybe you can justify 4 to 6% growth, and they get enough revenue to grow 20%. And what do? Do they put any of that away into a rainy day fund? No, they spend it all and say, let's take that kicker and put it into a rainy day fund, and I say no.
Okay, this is a bonus question for all 4 candidates. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer. We will begin with John Lim. Oregon's iconic Republican Governor Tom McCall was an environmentalist who helped establish the state's land use planning system and bottle bill. He was also a fiscal conservative, but was not always anti-tax. Tom McCall was known as a moderate Republican. How would you compare yourself to him?
Well, Tom McCall has been a great Republican governor, and even I read his book, I admire him. But at the time when he was a governor, it's a different time. Now is the economic downturn, and that the almost 12% unemployment, 20% underemployment, which means they are working part-time. 66 and 67 passed, many people considering moving out of it. So this is the different time. And when I was a legislator, I always independent-minded Republican. Whatever best for the people is best for me. So especially at this time, we need to downsize the government, smaller government, less government. And then the Senate Bill 100, which is passed that in 1973, we need to visit that bill again. And then sometimes state government coming more power on the private property right. It's about time we take some property right back.
Mr. Sizemore, Mr. Lim,
Yeah.
how would you compare yourself to Tom McCall?
Tom McCall?
45 seconds.
Well, in my independent-minded, I consider myself Oregon's Tom McCall in a conservative manner. And Tom McCall is a great man. I respect him. And then last governor of the Republican Party, Governor Atiyeh, also the good Republican governor. When I become the governor again, I'm going to look at this land use issue. There has been some good, but there has been a lot of damages on the property right. I hope I answered some questions for that.
Mr. Sizemore, your response.
It's a little difficult to answer that question because on one hand, I'm opposed to his primary legacy, the Oregon's land use system. But on the other end, and in fact put Measure 7 on the ballot to address that in 2000, which became 37 and eventually devolved into 49. But Tom McCall's Senate Bill 100 in the land use system that he designed actually had a companion bill that he allegedly, I was told by friends and supporters of his, that he supported, which required that whenever these regulations or restrictions had the effect of reducing the value of someone's property, there would be just compensation for what is in fact a regulatory taking of private property. I actually wrote that, completing Tom McCall's mission, if you will, into Measure 7, and voters approved that measure, which required government to compensate people when their property is taken. So on one hand, I think I oppose his legacy. On the other hand, I tried my best to complete it.
Mr. Dudley, your response?
Well, I enjoyed reading Fire at Eden's Gate, the story of Tom McCall, and what really came through that book was just his passion and his love for Oregon and what he was able to accomplish. And so I have great admiration for Tom McCall. Now, what also came through the book was he was started off as someone who put forth a lot of environmentally friendly bills, but by the time he passed away, he was seen as an outcast environmentally because it had drifted so far. So I think there's a balance in there which I appreciate for Tom McCall, which was the idea that you could use our natural resources, but still conserve them for the next generation. And I think in thinking of Tom McCall, I just think of a great man who just had a great passion and had the ability to lead. And that's something that we have not had in this state for a long, long time, somebody who can lead. And so I admire Tom McCall.
How would you compare yourself to him?
How would I compare myself? Well, I think environmentally, I think he was in between, where I go by the saying, and it was, I believe Teddy Roosevelt who said it, that the responsible farmer is one who leaves the land in better condition to his heirs than he inherited it. Now, it doesn't mean he doesn't work it. He does work it. And I think that's something that is lost in the equation. I think at times our state has made the false choice of you can't work, not touching the land at all versus clear cutting. And I think the answer is somewhere in between. I think you can work the land and preserve it to the next generation. What else do you want?
Mr. Alley?
So is the trick that you don't answer the question so you get 45 extra seconds? Can you could I get you to reset the clock to 1 for me, please? You know, I think Tom McCall, just like me, is the only one that would have stood up and debated the OEA, the OLCV, the Sierra Club, go to the AFSCME debate. I've done all of those things. In fact, the Sierra Club debate that we did just the other week, you know, there's 1,000 environmentalists there, and there's me. And it was kind of like being the Christian in the Coliseum, I guess. But what was rewarding out of that is I had very conservative people say to me, Alan, you said exactly the same thing to the environmentalists that you say in conservative rooms. And I had environmentalists come to me and say, Alan, you said things in a way that got me thinking differently for the first time about these issues. And I think that's what Tom McCall could do. I think that's what I can do, is bring both sides together.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move to the portion of the program where each candidate will have the opportunity to ask one other candidate a question. Questions must be asked in 30 seconds. The candidate to whom the question is directed will have 1 minute to respond, after which the questioner will have the option of a 30-second rebuttal. We will begin with Mr. Sizemore. Mr. Sizemore, your question.
I pondered long what question to ask, and the question I had prepared has already been asked by you and raised, so I'm going to change my tune here, and I'm going to ask Chris Dudley a question about abortion. He says that he is pro-choice, or that he believes Oregon's abortion laws are fine the way they are. And Chris, would you mind amplifying, are there any restrictions on abortion that you would be willing to sign?
Yeah, I've been very clear about this, that I would be open to a ban on late-term abortion and parental notification.
Do you want a rebuttal?
No, I have not heard him answer that way previously, and so I'm glad to hear that, actually, Chris. Thank you. Yeah. And it clarifies the matter for me, because the issue of abortion, where I have asked people often, how would you vote on a bill that says you can't have an abortion after a child has its own DNA, its own heartbeat, its own brain waves, and its own blood separate from its mother? And people say, oh yeah, I'm pro-choice, but I would vote for that. That actually occurs before most women even know they are pregnant.
Okay, Mr. Dudley, your question.
Well, I think I'll go for Alan. And the question is that throughout John Kitzhoffer's 30 years in politics,
Yeah.
what would you see as his failings or his summary of his career?
He said Oregon's ungovernable. I think that's the bottom line. I don't know how you could get, he has 30 years of experience in the legislature and as governor, and his parting words were, this state is ungovernable. And he governed during majorities and minorities, and I don't see how you could possibly walk out of that job and have that view. I don't think it is. Oh, by the way, I worked in a Democratic governor's office. And I think it was very effective to work within that office. I think I brought a different perspective to the table that was done with respect. I brought it with respect, and I was received with respect. Did we agree on everything? No. Did we have some lively discussions with Nesbitt and Terhune? You bet. But we did it with respect for each other, and I think we ended up with better policy for Oregon because of that.
Mr. Dudley, do you have a rebuttal?
No, that's fine.
Mr. Lim, your question.
They are afraid of me to ask questions, so I will go with Alan, okay?
Could I have my lifeline, please?
Okay. All right. I do appreciate each one of you running for governor, but Alan, I have a question as a governor, you're supposed to run, but you walked from
I
the
walked,
Baker City to
yeah.
Portland. And as a governor, what kind of mentality is that, and claiming to be the governor?
Well, John's referring to this walk that I did across the state of Oregon from Baker City to Portland. And all of my consultants, I see some consultants over here, they told me don't do it. In case you looked at the map, there's nobody that lives out there. But you know, I wanted to get to know Oregon at a different level and at a different pace. And it was the most rewarding experience that I've had on this campaign, to meet the people in Oregon and walk with them, walk with their dogs sometimes. And what I found, people ask me, what did you learn? You spent 30 days. I said, what I learned is I'll never completely understand. I'll never completely understand what it's like to be a farmer and to have a stream that you've been irrigating with for 100 years, have somebody put a fish screen on it and economically impact you, or somebody say, hey, I saw bull trout in that stream and you can't do that anymore. I'm developing a sensitivity for it, but I'll never completely understand, and I think I'm becoming a better listener as a result.
Do you have any response?
Yes, if I were you, at least in this environment, I'm going to at least ride a bike instead of walking. You know, to me, it doesn't make any sense, just no man's land and the working. I'm not sure whether you cheated in the evening or not, but pardon me, just I take that word back anyway. Okay, so I do appreciate that, but I couldn't figure out at this point why you walked and becoming the governor with that mentality.
Mr. Alley, you get the last question.
You know, I thought Chris and I were down at the Statesman Journal, and I think we had a difference of opinion on leadership and experience when we were in that debate. So I was going to ask Chris this question, but I thought I'd ask it of Bill to get a different opinion. And Chris mentioned that Chuck Daly was the best coach you ever worked for. Chuck had 22 years of experience before his first NBA job. And using that criteria that you don't need experience in order to do this, is John Lim qualified to coach the Blazers? Is John Lim qualified to coach the Blazers?
Yeah, oh, yes, of course, you know. By that logic, the reality is that governor's not exactly jumping in at the bottom level. It requires a lot of knowledge and experience of all kinds of issues and how the bureaucracy works, how the legislature works. And I believe that there's this plus about being an outsider that I think we all can say, well, that's good. An outsider isn't enmeshed in all of the politics of the situation. But you have to understand some things. And there are people running for governor and people running for the state legislature that often have no idea what they are doing and what they're getting into. And they don't have real answers. They want to help, they want to get involved, but they don't have leadership. And this is not a job for somebody to walk into with no experience and think they're ready to coach the Blazers.
Mr. Alley, rebuttal?
No, that's fine.
Okay, so we will now move to the final portion of the program, which are the 2-minute closing statements from each candidate, and we'll begin with Chris Dudley.
Well, thank you. Well, given that I'm new to politics and government, it's a fair question to ask of me, what kind of governor will he be? I'll be a governor that listens better than I lecture, because I believe that good listeners make better leaders. I'll be a governor that seeks out smart people with diverse backgrounds, from inside of government and out. And I'm more interested in your ideas than I am your party registration. I'll be a governor that sets clear goals, like those in my jobs plan, and focuses my time and energy on achieving those goals and working as a team. I'll be a governor that is accessible and spends a lot of time with people, inside of the Capitol and across the state. And I'll be a governor who knows what he doesn't know. And obviously, I'm not a government insider, but insiders have been in charge for a long time, and look where we are today. But here's what I do know. I know we aren't creating enough private sector jobs, and if we don't get started soon, Oregon is going to be a lot worse off, and I want to change that. I know that our state budget is growing faster than we can afford, and we have to get it under control. Governor Kulongoski said as much in his State of the State last week. and I want to change that. I know that because people, not government, create jobs that our higher education system has to get better. I would rather invest or bet on college students than an out-of-state energy company any day of the week, and I want to change that. And I know that Oregon is governable because we have great people, abundant natural resources, and an incredible quality of life. All we lack is leadership, and I want to change that. 8 years ago, when times were tough like they are today, Oregon needed a leader. And that's when John Kitzhaber said that this state is ungovernable. Well, if you only remember one thing about me, remember this, that as governor, I will never give up, I will never throw a tantrum, I will never quit, and I will never quit on Oregon, because I know you won't either. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Alley, your closing statement of 2 minutes.
How many of you know somebody that's out of work? Please raise your hand. Pretty much everybody in the room. I think this is the first time in my lifetime that I can say that statement. I say that statement wherever I go, where I'm pretty much assured that you're all going to raise your hands. You know, when I went to Salem, people used to say, "Oh, Alan, don't worry about it. Jobs just happen." They don't just happen. It's very hard to create and sustain a job in a globally competitive market. Better yet, a job with a future, that's what I call a career. And when I'm talking to my kids about what they're going to do, I don't talk about a job. I talk about what are you going to do over the next 30 or 40 years. We've grown state government spending 49% in the last 4 years. Is anything 49% better than it was 4 years ago? Do you have 49% smaller class sizes, 49% better schools or better roads? I don't think so. Yet we grew the state budget 49%. That just has to stop. We can't do it anymore. People used to say, "Alan, you can't run this place like a business. It's different. We have to take other things into consideration." You know what? We have to run it like a business. It's a $60 billion business, biennial business. It's about as screwed up as it possibly can be. We need a CEO. And I know my consultants say, "Don't say that word, Alan." We need a CEO. We need a chief executive. We need a chief excitement officer. I don't think we've had any excitement down there in a long time. We need a chief environmental officer. I mean critters and bugs, but I mean a business environment. I mean an environment to create private sector jobs. We need a chief entrepreneurial officer. We need somebody with a new idea. We need somebody that's going to turn school funding upside down. That's what we need in Salem. My name's Alan Alley. That's why I'm running to be your governor.
Mr. Sizemore, your statement?
I think the gift that I bring to Oregon politics, and some of you I know would not call it a gift, but as I have had the ability to look down the road and see problems coming before they got here. In '94, when I put the PERS measure on the ballot that would have ended the 8% guaranteed rate of return, voters approved it, the Supreme Court threw it out, all of whom were on PERS, by the way. Now we're $13 billion in the hole, but I saw it coming and I proposed what if it would have stayed the law would have actually not left us $13 billion in the hole. In '96, I looked ahead and I saw property taxes going to explode once again with the real estate market as hot as it was, and I put Measure 47 on the ballot to cap the growth in assessed values. Voters approved that measure. It saved taxpayers about $10 billion so far. 1998, I put a measure on the ballot. I said, hey, if we don't do something to stop the abuse of the public payroll system for collecting political funds when government should be neutral in elections and not helping one side, if we don't fix that, the public employee unions are going to control and own this entire state. And today, they do. 2000, I put a measure on the ballot that required that government pay just compensation for regulatory takings of private property to make the land use system actually not just be the dream of the environmentalist extremists, but also fair to the property owners whose rights to use their own property were being violated or infringed upon by government. I understand Oregon politics better than most people do. I've been in the middle of a lot of fights on a lot of issues. The positions that I hold, I can articulate. They're not just rash, right-wing kind of radical things. I can explain my positions. And when I do, people even that disagree with me and sometimes somewhat vehemently say, Bill, you know, I respect that you know what you're talking about, you know where you're coming from. And that gift will make me a good governor for the state of Oregon.
Thank you. Mr. Lim, your closing statement.
Thank you. Do I have a last word?
You do.
Okay. All right. In our state, all you know, we got a problem in terms of economy and unemployment. This is a big problem. We just cannot put our head in the sand and forget it. It is real. You need someone, as a governor, understands what's going on. I served in the Senate, in the House. I served as a Ways and Means chair of trade and economic, education, environment, you name it, I served it. I know every corner of the government what's going on. As a governor, I will be supporting small business, and we need a climate that business people can prosper. And second, I'm going to take the 66 and 67, hopefully sunset, working with the legislator. This is a very negative message to the business people. And third, I'm going to increase the international trade. We do about $16 billion a year, and we need to increase internationally. Oregon needs to stage in the worldwide. And then, if someone wants to be elected the next governor as a Republican, you know what? Multnomah County, someone has to carry Multnomah County. I was elected from Multnomah County 4 times as a Republican. I can carry Multnomah County big enough to win. So you are not looking at one of the candidates. I am the candidate. I'm going to lead the state. Many people claim, oh, I can be the next governor. How? They never been proven, they never been tested, and they never been elected. And I got every ingredient to be the next governor. We will weather out together of difficulties, and then you can count on it. I have a determination, I have a principle, I love this country, and I love Oregon. And Oregon loves the dreamer.
Thank you. That wraps up our forum for today. And as our President Sue Thomas returns to the stage, let's give today's debaters a big round of applause.
As we close, I'd like to thank our Truth Squad members, Brianne Arnold, Patty Tillett, and Ted Kay, and our timekeeper, Joe Sixta. A special thank you to our moderator, Sharon Van Sickle-Robbins, and of course, our greatest appreciation to our debaters, Alan Alley, Chris Dudley, John Lim, and Bill Sizemore. Tune in next week for Portland City Council seat number 3 debate. We are adjourned.